want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
We are the Madmen of Masculinity.
Your home for healthy masculinity. We're just real men having real conversations for you.
That's right, y'all.
That's right, boys and girls. That's right, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Hey, if you don't know, now you know. I am Kirk M. Samuels.
And I am Jason B. Kendrick.
And we are the Madmen of Masculinity.
That's right. We're just real men having real conversations for you. And it's time for real conversations, man. You know, we like to keep it real, sometimes go deep. And we were having this discussion on the golf course the other day about what's our next topic. And I was like, well, since it's coming to, July 4th, Independence Day, should we talk about something like that? And Kirk said something about freedom. And I was kind of like, everybody does that. And then we got into this discussion of how free are we, or are we really free? And that went, rabbit hole. So we're going to jump into that rabbit hole. We're jumping with both feet. And y'all going to enjoy, I hope. If not, you can hate us. We'll still get, all publicity is good publicity.
Well, the last line of our national anthem is land of the free and home of the brave. I don't know if we are necessarily the land of the free these days, because I don't know how many of us would actually consider ourselves completely free. I mean, I think we are, most of us by far are in debt or indentured to or slave to something in our country and in our culture. And so, man, the whole idea of freedom, I think it's an idea more than a reality here in our culture today.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to point out, because a lot of folks, we get on the whole America, the land of the free stuff, but when you dig down underneath, you get down into the catacombs. We're mostly wage slaves, like the elitist, or whoever you want to say, the people that own everything, figured out how to take what there used to be overt slavery and make it subvert slavery. And now we're all basically wage slaves, and it's really hard to break out of that. And I think even for those people who maybe are Fortune 500 CEOs or company owners, things like that, then there's probably a whole nother set of rules and things they got to follow and expectations. Plus, beyond wage slavery or what we have to do for work and to get money, we're have our addictions, alcohol, drugs, pornography, sex, shopping, all these different things we use to pacify ourselves or soothe ourselves. And I think I'm guilty of most of those things. And it's like, I think a lot of us are, that we have to accept that, guess what? Maybe we're not as free as we think, because we're not as free with our time. We're not as free with our choices, because a lot of times our choices are made for us subconsciously by our addictions.
Yeah. I mean, as a country, I mean, our government itself is, how many trillions of dollars in debt and all that kind of stuff. And so even as a country, as a country itself, we're not even debt free to ourselves. Most of our debt is owned by us, even though, we borrow from other places in the world, but most of our debt is owned by us. But either way, this generation is almost a slave to the next generation, and so on and so forth, because we're borrowing from our kids' kids, and our kids' kids. And so, I think it just creates a culture in our country of just indebtedness. And, indebtedness to a degree is in servitude, and in servitude to a deeper degree is slavery. And to me, slavery is the opposite of freedom. Freedom is my favorite word. I mean, freedom is, man, I love the word, the idea, the notion of freedom. As somebody who had a 30-year addiction, a deep addiction, not even just like, I want something to have sympathy about. Like, now we're straight up addicted to something. And I understand what it feels like to not be able to get free of that thing, and to have that thing control you and control your decisions and control your time and control what you do. And and that thing, I was a slave to that thing. That thing was making money off of me, off of my dependence on it, right? And so And so as a man, excuse me, as a man especially, I know what it's like to not be free, man, and to just feel like something owns you. And I think today, man, as a country, as a people, as a group, and especially as men, man, we need to really examine the idea of freedom and how valuable it is to us, and what are we willing to do to have it, to get it, and to keep it.
Yeah, that's a good point because I think for a lot of us, when we actually go down that rabbit hole and realize how not free we really are, and basically you get to the point of you realize, okay, well, my freedom is I can choose which slavery I want to have, or I can choose which things I'm beholden to. But you're not really free because it's really just you just have a few choices that and not having the freedom to have no choice or every choice is kind of the thing. And I think for a lot of us, once we start to go down that road and start thinking about, oh, well, I'm not, even though I've been told I was free and I'm landed free and all that stuff, maybe I'm not as free as I thought. And what is it going to take for me to actually become free? I mean, that's a whole mindset shift. That's a whole lifestyle shift. It's a huge thing where I think most of us would be like, plug me back into the matrix. I'm good. Like I don't want to be having to have all the responsibility on my shoulders. I don't want to have to make all the decisions. I don't want everything to be on me, which, I mean, when it comes down to it, I mean, true freedom really is total personal responsibility. And a lot of us, we've been trained out of that. We're like, no, let the boss make decisions. No, let the government make decisions. No, let those people do this, and I'll just go along with it. And then I'll just do my little complaining over here in the corner while I do whatever they tell me to do. It's that, double-edged sword of, yeah, you want to be free, but you also, if you want to be free, you want to truly be free, you have to truly be responsible as well.
Man, I think that's a great point, that with freedom comes responsibility, and responsibility is a burden. Responsibility is something that, that a lot of us, man, we'd rather not have. We don't like to necessarily take personal responsibility. We want to blame. We want to blame our bad relationship with our father. We want to blame our ex. We want to blame, the way we were brought up. We want to blame the government. We want to blame whatever it is, somebody else, a sibling. We want to blame religion. We want to blame all kinds of things, man. And it's like, no, in reality, I'm responsible for most of the conditions of my life. And, and in order to even want the idea of freedom, and in order to even care about pursuing freedom in my life, I have to recognize and understand that I got to leave excuses behind if I'm gonna go into the land of the free. The land of the free, is kind of a no excuse zone, and thereby taking responsibility for all of the choices and the repercussions and consequences. And sometimes those consequences are good. Sometimes the consequences of freedom are good, but the ownership of the outcome of my choices and my decisions are completely up to us to make and up to us to own. But we gotta be willing to do that, man. And us as, again, us as men, being able to step to the front of the line and to say, okay, I own this. If it goes bad, it's because of me. And whatever that looks like. In sports, it's kind of that way. I mean, if it goes bad, I own this. Whatever part of it I could or could not have even necessarily had a whole lot of control over. It's like, what could I have done better to make it so that this didn't happen? But we got to have responsibility, man. And when you don't have responsibility for those things, you're not ready to be free.
Yeah. And one of the things I'm finding too is like there's a different mindset, a different way to go about it. Cause I know I was talking earlier about, being responsible for everything as far as starting your own business and growing your own food and taking responsibility that way. But there's another way, another series of responsibility, which is really mental and spiritual responsibility. Because when you dig in and you heal yourself and you build your own frame, a lot of times you can handle this world a lot better because you're more grounded in who you are. I mean, you look at somebody like Nelson Mandela is a great example, 27 years in prison, And he was, during that time, he had made that choice, like, I'm free in my mind and I'm preparing myself for when I get out to either be executed or become the president. That was his thought process. And so no matter what your outer and external situation is, you can still be free internally. And I think for a lot of us, that's the greatest freedom, because when you have that internal freedom, you can appreciate even, whatever we were talking about before, wage slavery or being controlled by our jobs and the money and the government and things like that. You can find personal internal freedom within yourself. But the caveat is, and going back to personal responsibility, you have to take responsibility about doing the healing and the inner work. And that's the hardest part. Most of us talk about our addictions and our coping mechanisms is because we're trying to cover up the pain instead of dealing with it. And there's lots of different therapies. There's lots of different things out there. I just started internal family system therapy, which is really cool because it talks about the different parts of you. And most of us have split into many different parts as little children during our trauma, because the one small child, the hurt part, gets exiled, like hidden away. Then you have all these little protector parts that come out to protect and cope and do all these different things. Now you got, if you ever had been to a barbecue or a family reunion, when everybody's trying to do what they think is best, it turns into chaos. A lot of us are dealing with that as well. And so that's just one avenue you can go down, but you can find your own freedom, mental and spiritual freedom within yourself, no matter what your external situation might be. And that's something to look at, something you might want to, go after, especially if maybe your external circumstances aren't what you want them to be right now. You can still find joy and happiness and freedom internally.
Yeah, man, I think that's shortly for sure coming up after this break, man. I think that's a great idea, man. A great notion to unpack a little bit in terms of where does freedom begin? And or is freedom external or is it internal? Because I think maybe just the idea and the notion of what freedom looks like and the origin of freedom and all those kinds of things, maybe we look for it in the wrong place, man. Maybe maybe we do the work in the wrong place. Maybe we don't focus on the areas where we should focus in terms of getting the freedom that we're looking for, because we're looking for it in all the wrong places. And so for sure, man, I think let's take a break, and then after, man, I think that'd be a great, just a great spot to explore. Madmen of Masculinity. We are on KLDC 1220 AM in the Mile High City, and we will be right back. Boom. Recording this bad boy. If you watching us, man, you watching us recording an on-air radio show over the air, FCC Airways, Mile High City, 1220 AM, Denver, Colorado, home of the NBA champ Denver Nuggets and the MLB chumps, the Colorado Rockies, in last place in the National League, the worst record almost in baseball. Anyhow, that's a side tangent, but
yeah. And if you're commenting on this one, if you're trying to rant on this one, we're recording, so this is pre-recorded because it's the holiday. So we'll answer you after the fact, maybe tomorrow or the next day. So don't get mad if we don't respond right away. And we're back. Madmen of Masculinity on KLTC.
And we're back. Madmen of Masculinity. That's right, baby. Doing our thing like a chicken wing. Man, we're talking about freedom, talking about, the whole notion of freedom, the idea of freedom in a land of the free, the home of the brave. We take a holiday in the middle of the year to celebrate independence, our independence from foreign rule. Yet sometimes for most of us, for a lot of us, we have some kind of foreign rule in our life. And, when I think about our country's independence, that independence started on this soil. That revolution started on this soil, Boston Tea Party kind of thing. And so the question or the notion or the concept is maybe freedom begins within. Maybe freedom begins at the origin in terms of you're looking for freedom from the out. You might be looking for freedom from something else foreign, but maybe freedom has to start on the inside before you experience it on the outside.
Yeah, and I think that's where we really wanted to get with this, because how free are you? Are you really free? And what does that freedom look like? And for most of us, especially for a lot of us guys, we're looking for outside validation, looking for the things and our accomplishments to create our beingness and our sense of self, and we're doing all these external things but ignoring all the internal, our internal traumas, or having a strong frame and foundation within ourselves, so that those external things are less important. And granted, I mean, in the Western world, we are trained that way. It's all about the keeping up with the Joneses and the nice house and the nice car and whatnot. But really, the happiest people are the ones who have a sense of self and self-respect, and a grounded frame of who they are and what they're bringing to the world and what they want to create. So if we're out here looking at the world about what can I achieve externally and still not happy, which we hear all the stories, all these guys like, this is my goal, I want to make $1 million, I want a Fortune 500 company, whatever. They do that. And then usually it's well, now what? Now I need something new. I need something else to do, because it wasn't the thing. That was just a goal. That was something to do. It was something to achieve. But true freedom comes internally. And like the last example, think about somebody like Nelson Mandela. He was free in his mind and in his soul for 30 years in prison. And then he came out and they made him president. But he had to make that choice, and he had to do that work. And granted, he had a lot of time to do it. He spent all those years in prison, so he had plenty of time to go inward. But for a lot of us, we had to make that a priority. Can we create our own freedom inside ourselves?
I grew up, I had a lot of relatives, a lot of cousins that were in and out of prison. So I had the opportunity to visit them while they were incarcerated. And one of the things I noticed as a trend over the years of seeing them go in and out of the prison system is that it seemed like when they were incarcerated, they were in better condition than when they were free outside, walking around outside the walls of a prison. It seemed like when they were in prison, they were reading, they were studying, their minds were sharp, they were in the gym, they were working out, they were in shape, they were of their sound mind. It seemed like they kind of had a whole lot of things going on. And then when they came home, when they got out of the prison, all of a sudden, it's like a slippery slope right back to the street, right back to everything they knew. And and some of that is just a prison mentality. Some of that is just a slave mentality, in terms of you're better off inside the walls than you are outside of the walls. Those chains can kind of become, a comfort as opposed to incarceration. It's like the movie Shawshank Redemption, when Red says these walls, first you hate them, then you get used to them, then you begin to depend on them. And I think that speaks volumes as to how we are as a culture of, when we get enshackled, when we get chained up by these things, when we get incarcerated by these things, it can make us feel comfortable. It can make us feel, man, when I got these chains on, that means there's only so far I can go. That means there's only, that means my world is smaller. And when my world is smaller, then that means maybe I feel more comfortable, like a womb in a mother's belly. And so, you can have a slave mentality where you feel more comfortable when you're slave to something, when you're incarcerated, when you're chained up, than you do when you're free. But that mentality is like, man, you got to be able to be free. And a lot of those guys are freer on the inside, and a lot of us are free on the outside. Because a lot of those guys, they got this poop in the group, but us, we're out here, we can come and go, and man, we can't find our way out of a paper bag.
Yeah, and I think because for so many of us, we just want somebody else to make the decisions. Like, we want somebody else to make the structure. We want somebody else to decide for us. And so if we are in that situation, or a lot of those guys, their days are regimented, and I know, coming from the military like that, sometimes having regiment, having that schedule set for you makes it easier, because now half of your schedule, half of your life is already like, okay, this is what you're doing. And so then you can focus on the other things. So sometimes we don't handle having the freedom of choice as much as well as we think we do, because there's so much that we have to do. And I know even in my case, I would prefer to be working for myself and making my own schedule all the time. But there is something about having a schedule, knowing from this time to this time I'm going to be in these places and I'm going to go do this job or whatever, because it gives me a structure. Sometimes when we're wanting to be free and create our own businesses, or really truly free ourselves in the external sense, you realize it's a lot of work. You are 100% responsible. It means it's up to you to make a schedule. It's up to you to be disciplined. It's up to you to do all these things that you need to do. So when we look at how free are you, sometimes you have to look in the mirror and go, how free do you want to be? How much responsibility do you want to have? How many decisions you want to make? And there's nothing wrong with saying, I don't want to make 50% of the decisions, so I'm going to have a job and I'm going to make some money and have them give me a structure, because a lot of us need that. We need to have some kind of structure. If we don't have the structure of community or family, sometimes job or work or maybe the military or whatever it is can be that structure. But for a lot of us, it's a matter of choosing which form of structure or slavery or control you will accept into your life that will free you up. Maybe do that internal work will free you up, because when you have a job that makes you money, you have a house where you live in, you have all these different things which you can become a slave to, it still frees you up in some other ways. And so it's that double-edged sword of, everything that's a blessing is a curse, but it all depends on how you look at it and what do you want to do with it.
Man, I'm so glad you brought up the military, because I've been thinking about this lately with my son. So, it was like pretty much like almost exactly a year ago, I think this week, that he shipped out to go to boot camp. Um, and so he went to boot camp, and, as you know, in boot camp, literally every minute of your life is planned. Every single solitary minute is you're going to go here, you're going to do this, you're going to sleep here, you're going to eat here, extremely regimented. Can't get any more regimented. Like every single minute is mapped out for weeks, if not months on end. And so then and so there's really no thought in that. All you basically got to do is just do. And then he graduated that, and then he went to what they call A school, for hospital corpsmen. And so down there, of course, these kids are just coming out of boot camp and all that kind of stuff. So there, it's not quite boot camp, but they still have a pretty good amount of structure. They still do have to get in there studying and all that kind of stuff, but they still pretty much like march to class and march to and from, and they go to eat at the same time and all that kind of stuff. Um, they're just in class as opposed to getting yelled at and push-ups kind of thing. But they got time to hit the gym and all that kind of stuff. They do give him a little bit of free time. Then he leaves that, he graduates that. Now he's at another school down in Florida, where it's even like less regimented. Basically, he showed up on base and he's like, I have no idea where I go, what I do, and he just kind of reported into the barracks, and they gave him like a little mini apartment with this other dude, and he's like, well, now what? I mean, how do I go eat? Where do I go eat? He even texted like, Dad, what's some cheap food I can get, to have in my, because now you just go eat, like and then you pay for it, each time, and that you just, he's like, how do I just go eat, or do I have food in my room that I could just eat? And I'm like, so I had to give him some, some cheat code on some ways to, to get by for the cheap on food and all that kind of stuff. And then every evening and every weekend, they pretty much have off to do whatever they want. So him and his boys have been driving to this beach and that beach and all that kind of stuff. And I'm telling him, I say all that to say my coaching to him has been, now you got to manage your time. You can't go out and spend all your money every weekend. Now your job is just to go to class and be a student, similar to like a college kind of thing. Just go to class and be a student, but as far as you're studying, you got to make time for it, because, basically they don't have any expectations of structure. So I'm glad you brought the military, because I've seen that graduation with him in terms of the less structure as he progresses. And then the next step will probably be out to the fleet somewhere, where he's basically just showing up to work every day, whatever his job is. and then then he's really adulting. And so it's a hard transition to make when everything is regimented all the way to, okay, now what do I do?
Thing that happens to kids coming out of the house. You go from elementary school to high school, middle school to high school, and then all of a sudden you're in college and you're like, oh, you got some extra freedom and mom and dad aren't around. And you get out of college and you're like, now what? And so it's sometimes good to have a bit of regimentation, good to have a schedule, good to have some structure. But sometimes, if you really want to have true freedom, you got to be willing to be your own builder of your structure, your own leader, if you will. You got to be the one that makes those decisions. And for a lot of us, that's a hard thing. We're so used to having somebody else say, hey, go here, do this, that we're like, I don't know if I want to make those decisions. And so having that awareness, sometimes it's freeing to understand where you're at. So you can go, hey, I work better in structure. I work better in a job. I don't want to be an entrepreneur. And it's, there's a lot of different things that you can be doing to free yourself up. But sometimes just accepting that this works best for you and taking that mindset of maybe an abundance mindset, an appreciative mindset of like, I'm glad I've got this structure. I'm glad I've got this job. I'm glad I know I got to be here and do that. Because for some of us, that works better. Not everybody's self-motivated millionaire and entrepreneur. There's a small percentage of the population that can self-motivate that way. But sometimes freedom comes from just accepting who you are. And speaking of accepting who you are, we're going to accept ourselves a little break right here on KLDC, 1220 AM in the Mile High City. This is the Madmen of Masculinity, and we'll be right back. We got a delay on your end.
Really?
Yeah.
How you know it's not on your end?
Well, I'm seeing the delay on your end. When I stop talking, there's a delay, and then you start talking. So we'll have to figure that out. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to see how this comes out, man. We'll have to see what kind of audio we get out of this.
I think because we're recording, we can separate the audio. So I'll do that. I'll send that to Nikki. But yeah, the YouTube's going to be a little sketchy.
Nice. If you're watching us on YouTube, hey, this is how we roll. You know what I'm saying? This is we doing it. We doing it on a holiday. You know what I'm saying? We rolling in this thing, man. For real. All right, let's do it.
Yup.
And we're back. Madmen of Masculinity, KLDC, 1220 AM, Mile High City, madmenradio.com. Anywhere you can get a podcast, you can find us. Facebook, YouTube, all that kind of stuff. Holler at your boys, engage with us, help the algorithms and all that kind of stuff, man. Hit some buttons, some subscribes, some likes, some bells, and all that kind of stuff, man. Because we dedicate
hit all them things.
So help brothers out, man. We talking about freedom and that. One of the things that I encouraged my son also was hey man, make sure you get in that gym. He was from boot camp to A school, he was a gym rat, and now I'm like, you been working out? Well, I'm like, all right, man, we're getting all soft. So having freedom, man, gives you options, it gives you choices. And so, you gotta do that. You gotta do that thing, man.
Yeah, having your own structure and keeping yourself on a schedule. I know it's really nice when somebody else does that for you, but at some point you got to adult up and go, guess what? I've got to structure myself so that I can be more free, so that I can know what to expect and what to do. Because for a lot of us, when we don't, like Kirk was saying about his son, you get to that point where nobody's telling you what to do, your time's not regulated, and then you kind of start to fall off because there's no one saying, hey, you got to be here. It's up to you to self-regulate and self-motivate. And it's not as easy for a lot of us, I know myself included, I would wish somebody would be like, hey, get up, go here, do that, because then I don't have to think about it. And that's where the true freedom comes from, that real deep personal responsibility and being responsible for all of your choices and all your decisions and all your time and everything else, and creating that structure yourself. Because it's much easier to have somebody say, hey, do this, do that, and be here and be there, because then you don't have to think about it. And I think for a lot of us, realizing that, we're our freedom, or our best options of freedom is accepting we need that structure. Unless you hate it and you're like, you know what? No, I want to be completely free. Well, then you're 100% responsible. But then there's also a way where you can be free in your same situation. And that's free internally, free mentally, free spiritually when you heal your wounds and create the internal structure. And it's going to take work. It's going to take, got to get some help because a lot of times we tend to fall into that victimhood and that slavery mindset of addiction and self-medication because we're not willing to look within. And for everybody who's gone through the 12 steps, for whether it's alcohol, drugs, or porn, or shopping, or whatever it is, you realize that you have to go within. You have to heal that inner child. You have to do that work, and to find the freedom, because the cave you fear to enter is where your treasure lies, and sometimes that's right here.
I've been lately. I've been really into all of the content being put out by Jason Wilson. Another Jason. Y'all look nothing alike, by the way, in case you don't know. And I'm sure if you've been around, you've seen Jason Wilson. He's a bald-headed black dude. He's got a big gray beard. He's just really into emotional intelligence. So anyhow, he was, he does a lot of work with young men and books and all that kind of stuff. And he put out a thing today, and he was just talking about emotional incarceration and how men voluntarily these days have themselves in jails and in prisons emotionally, because once we start to deal with some of the inner battles that we have, we don't necessarily like what comes out of that, and in his words, what comes out of that is feminine, non-masculine emotions, and we don't necessarily want to deal with those emotions. And so, he was saying that a lot of men just choose to be emotionally incarcerated because we don't want to have to deal with, everything that comes with opening up some of those jail cells and letting out some of those inmates.
Yeah. Some of those inmates can be quite loud and be quite painful and kind of quite hard to handle. But that's why we say you need help with this. You need somebody to help walk you through it. Because, like Kirk was saying, especially for us guys, we don't trust emotions. We don't like emotions. We don't want to deal with them. For the most part. I even saw a post the other day, which was pretty funny. It was by I can't remember her name now, but it was on Instagram, and she was saying the biggest mistake ladies make with men is to expect them to deal with emotions like women do. And most men, we don't trust emotions. We trust logic and linear thinking. We trust our minds. So having somebody help you deal with those emotions and know that it's okay you have emotions, but also know if you don't deal with them, they will take you out. They will become hard to handle and harder to handle the longer you stuff them down. So accepting the fact that if you want to be free, if you want to create that internal freedom, that internal frame and strength of that self-awareness that comes from having to dive into those emotions. And it's a hot tub analogy all over again. It's going to be really intense at first, but as you settle in and you take some time and you sit with it, it gets better, it gets better, it gets easier. And what you'll find most of the time, once you go through all the protective layers and you get down to that core wounded boy, that little child, what was wounding or what was the situation that wounded him, it was nothing that you haven't dealt with 1,000 times already, but because he didn't have the tools or the maturity that you have now as an adult, he couldn't handle that. So it caused the trauma and it caused the story and caused the neural pathways to create these stories and that we have running our lives now as adult men. So know that the results, that the rewards from going through that are much higher and much greater than you can imagine, and not as bad as you think it is. It's never as bad as you think it is once you actually get to what the issue is. It's usually something smaller that you just couldn't handle as a smaller child.
But dealing with that stuff, man, we got to be willing to go back to the boy. And I mean, the only way you can heal the man is to heal the boy. And for us as men in this age, in this culture, man, there's so many of us who have wounded boys inside of us. And those wounded boys are actually the ones trapped and the ones incarcerated. And that wounded boy is the one that is stuck at some place. And a lot of us are emotionally stunted at age 8 or 9 or 10 or something like that, whenever something pivoted our lives and traumatized us or whatever. So a lot of us have been incarcerated since then. And the only way to to free the man is to rehabilitate the boy. Um, and or vice versa, maybe the only way to rehabilitate the man is to free the boy, because that boy probably never got a chance to grieve. That boy probably never got a chance to, to cry, or that boy never got a chance to be heard. That boy, never got a chance to be seen and be protected and to be honored. And all of these kinds of things. And so that boy inside of us is actually the one that's incarcerated. And he's the one that is dying to get out, that wants to see freedom, because he's been in dark places, his entire life for 30, 40, however many years. And so, in order for us as men to get to the point of being able to live as free as we can be, we have to be willing to go back and reach that boy that's inside of us, and reach that part of us that is stuck at some place, that part of us that got sentenced, a life sentence to something. And in order to free him from that life sentence, in order to commute that sentence, we got to be willing to go back and meet him. We got to visit him. We got to talk to him. We got to, do some work and rehabilitate him.
Yeah, the things that we as grown men crave are the things we need to give the little boy inside us, because that's what he was craving. If it's attention, if it's presence, if it's time, if it's being accepted, if whatever it is, whatever the things is that we tend to crave and seek out as adult men are the things we need to give to our inner child inside of ourselves, and do it in such a way so that we could free ourselves as an adult by freeing and giving that attention to that little small wounded boy inside of us. And for a lot of us, it starts be as young as 2 or 3 up to, for me, I felt like it was almost every 3 years. It was like 3, 6, 9, 12, so on, where there was something I had to acknowledge, something I had to deal with, something that I had to, as the grown man now, go, hey, little Jason, little guy, is going to be okay. And, I got you now. And you do, there's so many different, ways to do that. There's so many different therapies that you can find your own one that works for you, because there's different types that maybe will resonate with you better. But whatever it is, you got to get with somebody to help you reparent in yourself and that little boy inside you that was traumatized, because it's the traumatized little boy in all of us that's running our lives as grown men. And if we wonder why, or if you're wondering why you maybe aren't as successful, or you can't stop these addictions, or you can't break through the glass ceiling you set for yourself or your family set for you, it's because of the programming of that small child within you that's basically subconsciously running your life. And so if you want to be better, you want to be more successful, you want to have all those things externally and internally, it starts with looking in the mirror, going within, getting some help and support to heal that wounded child within us, that little boy. And I guarantee you 99% of us, gentlemen, have some wounded boy inside of us that needs our love and attention, that needs our compassion, and needs that healing so that we can be the successful man we want to be. And if you're struggling and having issues creating all those goals and all the results you want in life, probably that's where you want to look. It's that wounded boy inside of you that is coping with and in survival mode, and coping with life the best he can, and living from survival versus thriving.
Yeah. I'm going to be pretty transparent here in the next minute or two, and pretty vulnerable, hopefully for somebody else's benefit, but feeling kind of led to. I had some pretty traumatic things happen to me up in between birth and the age of 6, those formative years, and then at the age of 6, my brother was born. And when my brother was born, then now you got a new baby, and and then the new baby comes in, and then all of a sudden, the older kid gets kind of, just gets kind of pushed off to the side, feeling like, anyway, or at least I felt like, man, all of this happened to me, and now I'm even less relevant. I felt irrelevant because nobody ever checked on me, in those first however many years, felt like. And then I felt less relevant when he came along. And then, and I'm talking like, man, I soiled my pants until I was well into elementary school, I think. I mean, like, and now looking back, having done some work, I realized, man, I just wanted some attention. I just wanted to be seen. Like, I wanted somebody to say, hey, there's something wrong here, and that was kind of one of my ways to accomplish that. I mean, that was some of what I uncovered inside of me. And then at the age of 9, I found the best drug that I'd ever found in my life, and that was a naked woman. And then and then pornography took over for the next 30 years, and that became the voice that the thing that I thought saw me like no thing or nobody else ever saw me, and I saw that as a relationship almost, or like, wow, I get validated in this thing. It's there. I mean, and all these other kind of twisted things. And so I say all that to go back to the point of, man, that little boy inside is the one that drives a lot of what the man does, and it dictates a lot of what the man does, and it keeps us from the freedom that we deserve. And speaking of freedom that we deserve, man, I think we should be free to take a break.
Let's do it.
I'm kind of drained. What do you think? Is that all right with you? All right.
Let's do it.
Mad Men of Masculinity, KLDC, 1220 a.m. We'll be right back. Yeah, there's definitely a lag.
Mm-hmm. You got to fire your internet provider.
Oh, man. Whew. Man, I ain't never told nobody about all that stuff, man.
Well, I was going to jump on my side, but I was going to jump on mine, but we'll do that in the next segment.
Yeah. Right on. Right on. Let's roll at 42.
And we're back.
And we're back. And we're back.
Mad Men of Masculinity.
And we're back. And we're back. And we're back. And we're back. Oh, I'm on repeat. I'm sorry.
Yeah, skipping. He's got the vinyl going.
Remember the old CDs, or not CDs used to do it too, where you used to skip, and then you would breathe on it and like rub it on your thing, like that would fix it. You know, I mean, man,
you get those little scratches. You try to rub them out.
Yeah. You get some alcohol. Like, what is alcohol going to do? Anyhow, whatever.
I used to have that whole thing. It was like you put it in there and you spin it and you like put the alcohol in there and it was supposed to like shave it down or whatever, but it didn't work all that good. It was still skipping.
It was good when we had the cassette tapes, man. We could just make a mixtape. You listen to the radio, and when they're about to play a song, you hit record, and then you would pause, and in the commercials, you make you a little mixtape, man, and have a little girl come over, be like, girl, I got a mixtape for you, girl. I'm gonna play this mixtape for you. You know what I'm saying? I made this one up for you.
The kids nowadays got it so easy. Someone send me their playlist. I'm like, I don't even want your playlist. You don't know how hard we had it, where we had to stay up. We had to time it. We had to know what radio show, what DJ was coming on. We had to be right there, ready with the blank tape. But then sometimes you would mess up, and you wouldn't put the tape over the little record hole on the cassette, and then you would miss it. So you thought you were recording, but you didn't record it. And then you had to double. I mean, it was a whole night thing. So like that mixtape that we would give y'all, that was from the heart.
I forgot about that little record hole, man, and having to cover that thing up, man. I forgot about that, man. And those was the days, dude. Them was the days, man. We talking about free. We was free back then, man. We was free to we was free to do the thing.
Yeah, I remember. That's one of the things I keep uncovering is trying to get back to the little boy, the true version of myself, through all of the stuff, so that I can start to play again, start to have fun again, because so much of that stuff, I mean, we were talking about it, you were talking about your story. I mean, my parents did the best they could, but they didn't come from the best upbringing. And so my physical needs were met, but all the emotional needs were kind of not even looked at. And, I was on my own all the time. And then I learned to people please and become the nice guy and put everybody's needs before me. So then I was self-abandoning while I was kind of being abandoned from, my parents having to work all the time and not being there and having their own lives to live and things like that, which I can look back on as an adult now. And I get it. I understand, they got their own lives going on, all the things they want to do. But, I wasn't getting the things I needed. And so it's incumbent, if I want to be free, and for a lot of you guys out there as well, I'm talking to you, if you want to be free and become the best version of who you really are, you got to go back to that little boy who was the truest version of you, who then began to edit and self-abandon and correct itself and become a people pleaser and do all the different things to try to survive in whatever environment they're in as a child, to make yourself the best version of the adult man you can be. Because a lot of us are struggling and not realizing it's because as the egocentric child who did not have the awareness or the tools that you do now as an adult male, we created these patterns that are now running subconsciously under the surface and running our lives. And it's causing us to self-medicate with addictions of alcohol and drugs and porn and sex and money, and maybe we're workaholics, whatever the thing is. And it's not leading us to that freedom and happiness we all truly want. So to get there, we got to go back in. Got to go back to that little boy and find who we truly are, who that spark inside of us that really is who we were supposed to be before the outside world decided we were going to be something else.
Man, I like I said, man, I think, I think going back, rewinding that mixtape to the beginning, and starting over from scratch, man. And, to your point where we create all these things, and, from even back in the day, man, when you had that tape, the more times you recorded over that tape, the less quality you got when you played that tape back. And so as we've recorded over these mixtapes of our lives, we've gotten more distortion in terms of what reality is and in terms of what freedom should be. Even like, what does free look like? Free doesn't look like I get to feel whatever I want to feel, or I get pleasure. Free doesn't always look like pleasure. Freedom looks like your responsibility to make informed decisions, right? And the opportunity and responsibility to make informed decisions. And so, man, when we have those, opportunities in life as we get older to maybe go back and do some of that work, man, and to process some of these things, and to really like to give voice to that little boy, and to give all that kind of stuff, man, and to just recognize, like, this is how I got here. Like, I didn't completely get myself here. I've made a lot of choices. A lot of my choices were informed by a lot of the things that happened to me. But at the same time, at some point I need to step in, and I need to be the man to give that little boy what he needed, even though it was 40 plus years ago. I need to be able to step in and be the guy that he wished was around. And part of that is not even just being tough and being hard and protecting him, but part of that is hearing him. Part of that is sitting with him. How many of us as little boys just wanted somebody to sit with us, right? Just sit with me, man. Sit and play Tonka trucks or something, or Lincoln Logs or Legos, or play He-Man, or Stretch Armstrong or something, but just sit with me, fish or whatever it is. And so sometimes we got to sit with that little boy. Like I said, spend some time in the visiting room, man. Spend some time, during visiting hours, man, just sitting and processing, going for walks, and getting out in nature and all. I mean, when it's beautiful weather, even in the summertime when it's warm or whatever, get out and get into Mother Nature, man, and just experience that. But the freedom that we need and the freedom that we want as men, I'm telling you, man, it's tied up in going back and spending visiting hours with the little boy that's inside of us.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because most of us spend most of our time as adults trying to protect that inner child. And some of those ways we protect leads us to the addictions, leads us to the things that we use to self-medicate and to soothe. And so being able to sit with that little child and experience that pain again, and to diffuse it and to heal it and to give them that attention. And that's what I was saying before. The things that we crave now as adult men are the things we probably didn't get as a young child. And so if you want validation, you got to learn to validate that inner child yourself. If you want attention, you got to learn to give attention to your inner child as well, and heal those things so that you can be more grounded and you can find the freedom within yourself. Because a lot of us guys are running around nowadays, not even aware of why we're doing the things we're doing and where it stems from, because we won't stop to look in, because it's emotional, because it's painful, because it's something we're not used to doing. We're just used to, sucking it up and rub some salt in the wound and keep on going. But that's not taking us to the healthy men we want to be. That's not freeing us to be the best versions of ourselves we can be. To be that best version, we've got to go within and heal all those little boys inside of us, all those little pieces and parts that didn't get what they needed. And that may look very different for each of us, but I guarantee you all of us have to spend the time, give ourselves some attention, be present, and acknowledge that, yes, we went through that, because it may seem like such a small thing as an adult grown man that that little part of you went through, getting yelled at or being left in the room in the dark when they were scared and being told to shut up, not having anybody home, so they had to cook hot dogs themselves, or, whatever the situation was. As a little child, that's a big thing because it's all new experiences. I think it's something we forget as grown people. Every little child's experience is like everything the first time of everything. So every time they have that experience, even though you've had it 100 times, that's the first time they've had a heartbreak. That's the first time they skinned their knee. It's the first time they had a shot. It's the first time they felt scared in the dark or whatever. And so acknowledging that fear and acknowledging that pain and going, I got you, can actually free you up to become that man you've been wanting to be. Because I know all of us want to be better men. We want to be better for ourselves, better for our families, better for community. But to become better men, we've got to heal the little boys inside us so that we can be that better man we want to be. You cannot be, I'm positive, I'm sure of it, I believe in my whole heart, you can't be the greatest version of yourself and not be free. I mean, and be slave to anything. You can't be great and a slave at the same time, great and incarcerated at the same time, great and indebted at the same time. You can't be great and still be chained down, have a brick holding down your balloon. You can't. And so you have to be able to cut the string that's holding your balloon to your brick some kind of way and find your way to freedom from whatever it is that's holding you down, whatever it is that's holding you back. And the reality is, the tough reality is, it's probably going to need somebody to help you through that. You're probably going to need some help getting past the obstacle, getting over the obstacle. I remember I ran the Spartan race with a buddy of mine. This was several years ago, and at the very end, man, they had a 10-foot wall, like just straight up wall. There was no ledge, no nothing like that. And the whole point of that obstacle was you had to have help getting up. Most people can't jump 10 feet and grab a ledge and then pull themselves up. You had to have help getting up over that wall. And some of us have Spartan races with a 10-foot wall, in front of us. And the only way to get through that obstacle, or to get past that obstacle, is to go over it. And the only way to get over it is to have help getting up and getting over that thing. And I know for a fact that if it wasn't for my buddy that ran it, there's no way I'd have made it up that thing. Absolutely not, man. And for that matter, nobody would have got past it. Hardly anybody would have got past it if it wasn't for somebody else reaching down and helping them up, giving them the assistance that they need. So you got to be free to be great. And you probably got to have help in order to be free. And that's just kind of the realities of life, man. And that's just something I've learned for sure. Yeah, it's something that we hear, we think it's road. We don't put much, stock into it. But, it says it takes a village to raise a child. Well, you didn't have a village to raise your child. So now you need to find a village to help you heal that child and become the best version of the grown man that you are. So we all need help, gentlemen. This Lone Ranger white knuckling is taking us out faster than anything else is. So it's time to accept the fact that if you want to be free, that personal responsibility that you need to take on yourself is to heal and to be responsible and to ask for help. We all need to ask for help. We need other men. We need other support. And we need that village around us. And it's, I get it. I've been an isolationist my entire life. Only child, 2 working parents, always on my own. It's not the easiest thing to do to ask for help. I can vouch for that all personally. But it is the thing we need to do. We need to say, guess what? I want to be free. I need help to get there. I need help with finding the right path. I need help talking about these things and getting support and all those different things. And so once you accept that your freedom is going to come with help, you'll have a much better chance of getting there, because you may go fast alone, but you go far together. And until next time, Madmen of Masculinity, we are out.